Welcome back. Now we are on our part 7, which starts at 1:20 p.m. with Dear, which is drop everything and read. Less than 2 hours to go, Jordan said. Christopher let out a loud whoop. You do that again, we'll have 15 teachers coming through that door, Karen said, pointing. Is that what you want? Sorry, Christopher said, pouting and sucking his thumb. At that moment, Bastian and John burst into the room, both wet from the rain. Greetings, Earthlings, John announced with a formal bow. Take me to your leader. Give me a towel. Yo, John, Christopher cried. You finally made it. He stood and started to applaud. I thought you were sick today, Jessica said. Feeling much better, John said, bowing again. He shook his head and waited, and water from his hair sprayed all over the place. Hey, quit that, Jessica yelled. I wrote a note for him, Bastian said. He skipped into school. Yes, Christopher sprang up to slap John 5. You guys smell like wet dogs, Vicky said, wrinkling her nose. Thank you, John said, bowing for the third time. He strolled to the front of the room and fell back into Mr. Fobb's empty chair. I wouldn't miss this for $1,000,000. John pulled out 2 bags of candy from his backpack and tossed them to Tim and Christopher. Party time, Christopher cried, ripping open a bag. You mean DEAR time, Karen said, pointing at the board. John laughed. You're kidding, right? Rachel closed her eyes and pictured Tommy Feathers during Dear reading, with his face close to the book. He always hummed while he read, and he always hummed the same thing, the 1812 overture. No way, Bastian said hotly. I'm not gonna do Dear or Dare or Dweeb or any other stupid thing. We shouldn't be doing any work. We've got no teacher. At this rate, we're going to get into the Guinness Book of World Wimps. Mr. Fabiano always does, dear, after lunch, Karen said, as if that settled it. Now hear this, Bastian said. He cupped his hands around his mouth and spoke as if through a megaphone. I have an important announcement to make. Mr. Fobb is not here. Repeat, Mr. Fobb is not here. That's what you think, Tim muttered. I'm reading, Jessica said. Why? Bastian demanded. Because I happen to enjoy it, she replied calmly. Yeah, me too, Vicky put in. Some of the girls started pulling out their books. Look at this, John said, stuffing 2 pieces of bubble gum into his mouth. He held up a computer disk. Anybody up for playing a little Doom 3? Yeah, I do. I'm playing. Let me go first. Tim, Christopher, Robert, Corey, Jordan, Sky, Bastian, and John all rushed to the back of the room and crowded around the computer. You guys are so wicked, awesome, cool, Rhonda said. Fact, Christopher said. Go back to Dear, Tim told Rhonda. Be quiet, Rhonda told him. I feel sorry for you, Tim said. I really do. That's how Dear time went. The boys played Doom 3. The girls read. Rachel looked over at Sean's empty desk. She wondered which one he would choose, the computer game probably, even though he didn't usually hang out with the boys much. The room felt different, emptier, now that he was gone. Rachel pulled out her book. She loved reading, but the whole idea of Dear bugged her. Why cram reading into a 15-minute time block and give it a cutesy name like that? Why not just call it Reading? It was the world's dumbest title. You didn't drop everything when you read. You picked something up. Still, reading was the best part of the afternoon, especially on a rainy day like this. There was a cozy feeling in the room when the whole class, including Mr. Fabiano, read their books together. Rachel picked up her book, A Beginner's Flight Manual. It was the most detailed book she had ever read on how to become a pilot. She read slowly so she wouldn't miss a single word. Here is what she read. Several steps are involved in earning a pilot's license. Each one requires many hours of practice. The next 3 chapters will cover the following areas. Chapter 8, Simulated Solo. Engineers have designed machines known as flight simulators to help train pilots. These machines are totally realistic, with all the pedals, instruments, rudders, and throttles you have in a plane. Sitting in a simulator on the ground feels like you're actually flying in a jet or propeller airplane. A simulator allows you to experience flight conditions, takeoff, flight, approach, and landing in a controlled setting where you can't get hurt. Chapter 9, Supervised Solo. This happens much later in your training. In the step, you can actually fly the plane under the guidance and strict supervision of an experienced pilot. Often the pilot will take off or land the plane, but allow you to fly for short periods of time. Rachel looked up from her book. The room had begun to turn bright. She looked out the window and saw that the rain had stopped and the sunlight was playing sparkling tricks on the new grass. For some reason, this sudden light reminded Rachel of her first airplane flight. She was 10 years old, flying to visit her father in New Mexico. The plane left in a heavy rainstorm, rose through thick clouds, and then burst through into the purest sunlight, the bluest skies Rachel had ever seen. Back to the book, Chapter 10, Solo Flight. This is the ultimate goal, to fly on your own. Flying solo. Now we're to 1:35 p.m. exploration. Okay, guys, we better stop. Stop, Karen said. No, Christopher cried from the computer. I'm just about to kill this guy. We've got exploration, Karen said, pointing at the schedule. Tim and Jordan booed softly. Christopher began sounding a low chant. Boring, boring. Rachel sighed and slowly closed her book. As far as she could tell, exploration was just a snazzy word for geography. Which boiled down to old-fashioned map skills. She dreaded this subject, and she suspected that Mr. Fabiano felt the same way since he scheduled it so late in the day. Not even a teacher like Mr. Fabiano could breathe much life into map reading, though he certainly tried to show his students how important it was. If you want to fly, you have to know how to read a map, Mr. Fabiano told her one time. Longitude and latitude, elevation, there's no way around it. If you want to be a pilot, you have to know this stuff cold. But it's so deadly dull, she had written on a slip of paper. Don't even think about it, Tim said, shaking his head. We're not doing any more work. This won't take long, Karen said. She started passing around the photocopies. There's just one worksheet, and then we're home free. I bet we knock it off in 20 minutes. Where's the legend? Right over there, John said, pointing at Bastian. Very funny. It's true, John said smugly. He's the legend because this is his last day of school. I'm gone, Bastian said. I'm history. Have a nice life. Wow, Christopher cried, furiously rubbing both eyes. Goodbye, Jasmine said coldly. Now, where's the map legend? Do I have to spell it out for you guys? John asked, pointing at Bastian. It's his last day. We have to do the rock ritual. It's not on the schedule, Karen said doubtfully. Forget the schedule, John cried. He's leaving. This is our last chance. Fact, Christopher put in. For a second, nobody spoke. I guess you're right, Karen said reluctantly. Mr. Fobb probably would have put it on the schedule if he'd known it was his last day. It just seems weird to do it without Mr. Fobb, Jessica said. Map skills or rock ritual, Missy asked. Which way should we go? Should we vote? What do you think, Bastian? Vicky asked. Bastian was looking out the window. He's thinking about Hawaii, Tim said. You bet, Bastian said. He was really thinking about Barkley. Flying alone across the Pacific, the largest ocean on Earth. The flight would leave tonight at 6 p.m. Okay, who votes for a rock ritual? Karen said. Everybody raised his or her hand except Jasmine and Jessica. Opposed? Karen asked. The class stared at the two girls, but they still didn't raise their hands. Are you waiting for a third choice? Christopher asked. I abstain, Jessica said, arms folded. Me too, Jasmine put in. Oh, brother. Tim grabbed his head. Come on, we're running out of time, Karen said. Go get the rock, Sebastian. 1:40 p.m. Rock ritual. Bastian went to the closet. From the top shelf, he took down a large wooden bowl. Inside, there were about a dozen beautiful rocks, polished, glittering chunks of pyrite, and several quartz crystals. The bowl was heavy, and he had to balance it carefully so it wouldn't drop. He put the bowl in the middle of the circle. Mr. Fabiano was big on rituals, especially inventing new rituals for things that mattered. He had a special welcome ritual for when a new kid came into class. He had the ritual of playing music during writing time. He had the ritual of reading aloud a certain book, the day you were born, whenever someone had a birthday. The purpose of the rock ritual was to say goodbye to a class member who was leaving. Mr. Fabiano called it a closure ritual. The class made a circle around the person and watched while that person chose one of the rocks. Everybody else took turns holding the rock while sharing a memory about the person who was leaving. The rock got passed around the circle from student to student, soaking up memory after memory, story after story. The departing person took the rock away when he or she left. Rachel remembered the rock ritual they had when Miss Wilcox, their student teacher, left the class in February. In October, they had tried to do a rock ritual after Tommy Feathers died, but that time it didn't work. They used the pyrite cube, fool's gold, that had been Tommy's favorite rock. The pyrite cube had got passed from student to student, but nobody had anything to say. Now the golden cube was sitting on Mr. Fabiano's desk. Ah, the ritual of the sacred rocks, Christopher exclaimed, bowing so low his head touched the floor. For once, act your age and not your IQ, Jessica suggested. Some kids laughed at that. Gee, the last time I heard that one, I fell off my pet dinosaur, Christopher exclaimed. Shush, Karen urged. The class waited while Bastian peered into the bowl and picked up a fist-sized rock, brown on one side, studded with sharp white crystals on the other. He moved the rock into a shaft of sunlight, and the crystals threw tiny rainbows onto the wall. Karen clapped twice. The ritual of the rock begins in silence, she said. Bastian put the rock in front of him, and everybody closed their eyes for 1 minute of silence. Bastian closed his eyes. He felt the strangest feeling inside him, a sensation that had been growing during the day, a jagged kind of sadness he had never felt before. He opened his eyes and peeked at the other kids. He had spent 8 months with them. He would try to keep in touch with a friend like John, but the rest of them would drift out of his life forever. He didn't feel broke up about leaving any of them. So why this sadness, so sharp, so sudden? It didn't make sense. Sean O'Day came and squeezed into the circle next to Rachel. At that instant, all Rachel could think of was Tommy Feathers, the way he always scurried to sit next to her during circle time. That was the thing about Tommy. She might forget his dirty hands or the off-key way he hummed during writing time, but she would never, ever forget the way he looked at her. A look filled with love that was transparent as the cleanest glass. You could see right through it. Would anyone else ever care for her like that? All right, Karen said. She picked up the rock Bastian had chosen and handed it to Christopher. My turn? Okay, well, I remember the time last fall we were playing kickball. We were losing like 9-0. We scored a bunch of runs in the last inning, and you kicked a grand slam to win it, 10-9. Yeah, Bastion nodded. And Rick Frost tried to trip me when I came around third. Christopher passed the rock to Robert. I remember at the beginning of the year when you made that substitute cry, Robert said. Yes, Christopher said, raising his fist. Tim and John gave each other high fives. Remember when you whipped those pennies against the blinds? Robert asked. That was so loud. Rachel remembered. The substitute teacher was an older woman who couldn't control the class. Kids threw airplanes, a spitball, cheese doodles. She demanded to know who threw the pennies at the blinds, and when nobody told her, she started to cry. That was so excellent, Christopher said. That was so mean, Jasmine muttered. Robert passed the rock to Corey. He examined it, then looked up and grinned. Remember when you blew up that mailbox? He said. I was there, John said, drumming his thighs. Oh, that was great. Who, me? Bastion asked innocently. He put a cherry bomb in it, shut the door, and blam, Corey said. There was metal all over the place. Thank you, Bastion said, nodding left and right. Whose house was it? Vicky asked. Who cares? Christopher said. Corey passed the rock to Sean. Sean took the rock and slowly turned it over in his hands. Well, I remember your birthday party, he said softly. We threw Mr. Fobb into the pool. Everybody smiled. Yeah, Jasmine said, and your mother ironed all his paper money to dry it. Remember that? He wasn't even mad, Tim said. My old man would have killed me if we threw him in the pool. Shh, Karen said. It's Sean's turn. You got that puppy for your birthday, Sean said. That's the kind of dog I want to get. I'm saving my money. Yeah, Bastion said, and he felt it again. A rush of sadness, strange, mysterious, welling up inside of him. And all at once he got it. He understood. He had been moving toward it all day, but he hadn't figured it out until that very moment. The sadness was about Barkley. Dad was right. It would be flat out wrong to put Barkley through the quarantine. 4 months was 122 days, 2,928 hours, 175,680 minutes. That was too long for a little puppy to wait, no matter how many times Bastion visited him. It would be cruel to put Barkley through all of that. A moral decision, and he knew the right thing to do. He had to give Barkley away. Give Barkley away? Yes. No decision had ever felt more right or made him feel more miserable. Now he understood the real reason for this rock ritual. It was a closure ritual, a chance to say goodbye, not to the other kids, but to Barkley. He tried out the words, saying them under his breath. Goodbye, Barkley. Sean passed the rock to Rachel. You gonna pass? Asked Tim nervously, bouncing his knee up and down. Rachel held the rock in one hand, a pen in the other. At the far end of the room, she could see the picture of Tommy Feathers. According to his parents, Tommy Feathers went to bed at a normal time and never woke up. Dr. Norton was preparing an autopsy, but he said that preliminary indications were that the boy had died from natural causes. Rachel swallowed and stared at the picture. Whenever she looked at it, she imagined that he was looking at her. Natural causes. Tommy had been 14 years old when he died. How natural was that? You passing or what? Tim asked again. Come on, give it here. Rachel gave Bastion a level look. Then she leaned forward and began to scribble on a note card. Oh, we'll be here all day, Tim muttered. Rachel handed the card to Missy. She read it and blew out her cheeks. You want me to read this? Missy asked. Rachel nodded. Missy read the card in a clear voice. I remember how you teased Tommy Feathers. Silence. Kids glanced from Rachel to Bastion. Yeah, so, Bastion said. Big deal. Aren't we supposed to tell like good memories? Jasmine asked. A memory is a memory, Missy said. Rachel bent and started to write on the other side of the card. She had her turn, Tim said. Come on, pass the rock. Yeah, Christopher said, but everyone waited for Rachel to finish writing. You raced him to the bus, Missy read in an angry voice. But as soon as he started running, you'd stop and let him keep going all the way to the bus. He was a slow kid and you teased him. You called him Dr. Drool. So what? Bastian said, shrugging. Is it my fault the kid drooled? Yeah, I teased him. I tease everybody. Name one person here I don't tease, huh? Nobody spoke. What? Bastian shouted, looking around at the other kids. You think I'm the only one, huh? Shh, Karen said. Hey, I didn't kill him, Bastian hissed. His eyes narrowed. His voice got low and gravelly. The kid had medical problems, okay? He died in his sleep. And he was a pain. Everybody's afraid to say it, but it's true. You know it and I know it. Rachel was writing again, lips compressed with fury. I think we should stop, Jessica began. Yeah, maybe we'd better. You should talk, Bastian shouted at Rachel. Why don't you write about the 50 million hearts and valentines he made you? Will you please keep it down? Karen begged, but Bastian ignored her. Remember that time he asked you to be his girlfriend? He yelled at Rachel. You blew him off. You just laughed at him. So shut up, Rachel. Just shut up. He grabbed the pen out of Rachel's hand and threw it across the room. Rachel balled up the note and threw it at Bastian. It bounced off his chest. Then she dropped her face into her hands and started sobbing. Her shoulders shook. The sobs filled the room and they startled the class because they carried the buried sound of a voice they had not heard for half of a year. It's okay, Sean whispered, putting his hand on her shoulder. With his other hand, he picked up the note and unwrapped it. Remember that little Nerf football you gave him for his birthday? Sean read quietly. Tommy kept it in his desk. He told me it was the best present he ever got. He looked up to you, Bastian. He trusted you. Bastian closed his eyes. There in the darkness, he saw the whole thing. Barkley, Tommy, the Nerf football, Barkley and Tommy looking at him. Bastian leaned forward and started to cry. Everybody froze. Suddenly, Bastian sprang up. He threw back his arm and threw the rock at the window. By some miracle, it flew through a 4-inch space between the opened top window and the glass below it. Bastian swore and ran out of the room. John ran out after him. And that was our Part 7 of Flying Soldiers.